Welcome to Eritrea channel. Today we are here with Nebiyu Asfaw. He is here from Denver for a couple of reasons. I would like him to talk about it, but I'm honored to have him. Nebiyu is not, he's very familiar with the Eritrean and Ethiopian communities because he's been very active with the No More movement, and and everybody is familiar with him. And just a little bit about him. He'll be able to say more about himself, but I just wanted to say a couple of things. Nebiyu Asfaw is a social justice advocate from Denver, Colorado. He's the co-founder of the No More Global Movement. He's also a co-founder of the Ethiopian American Development Council. He is very active into promoting social justice, and that's what I would like to say about him. And the rest, I would leave it up to Nebiyu to tell us. Welcome, Nebiyu. Thank you for taking the time to come here to talk to the Eritrean community, to the Ethiopian community, and to the wider global community about Pan-Africanism, the current developments, the U.S.-Africa Summit, and some other things about the Eritrea-Ethiopian relations. You have tremendous amount of knowledge. So without further ado, welcome, Nebiyu Asfaw. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Emmanuel. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing this program. And I'm happy to be here. And, the last 2 years have been extraordinary in a sense where, I've had the privilege and opportunity to work very closely with many Eritrean brothers and sisters. And I have a great deal of admiration for the resilience of the Eritrean people and really the brotherhood, the sisterhood that Eritreans have extended to Ethiopia during this very difficult time. Really a true friend. So I'm grateful. And also this week, one of the main reason that I'm here in Washington is the Africa People Summit, which was hosted at the Eritrean Community and Cultural Civic Center here in DC. Beautiful facility, and the hospitality was great, and it was a great event. Over 450 people attending from all over Africa. So it's been great, and thank you again for having me here.
So you came here for a couple of reasons. I'm saying that because I'm familiar with that. Can you tell us what those reasons were?
Yeah.
And do you feel like you were satisfied with your trip?
Yeah,
You came all the way from Denver.
that's right. So yeah, now obviously this week is the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit happening here. Over 50 Africa head of states are here in Washington, and there's different events going on, sponsored by the State Department and the White House. But better yet, we hosted the Africa People Forum that really, I believe, carried the message of the people of Africa without being filtered through the institutions, and I thought that was really great. We also had other events. The American Ethiopian Public Affairs Committee (APAC) had its annual fundraising Saturday night, so we got together there, and that was great. While I'm here, I'm gonna have some opportunities to meet with some, great people that we've been working with for a long time. We're going to be meeting in person, and also do some advocacy. I have a couple of meetings with some senators and Congress people as well. But like I said, mainly the Africa People Summit that we did at the Eritrean Community Center is really the flagship event that brought us all together and really helped us articulate our people's message.
So we will talk about it a little more. I would like you to talk about what led you to advocacy work, and also if you can talk a little bit about yourself. How you came to the United States, how you came to be so articulate to be interested in some of the subject matters that you're dealing with. I'd really like that, and I'm sure the people would like to hear that because it is a personal story. It is a personal story that we all share, and I would like you to share a little bit of that, if you may.
Yeah, sure. I came in to the U.S. when I was a child, so I grew up here. Uh, but one of the reasons, and I've been active. I was active in high school organizing, and then in college I was active organizing, but mainly with African American groups. And but eventually, about I started kind of getting into African. Movements, and then Ethiopian community. Um, and I've done some of the things in Denver. I co-founded a festival, for example, the Taste of Ethiopia Festival, annual festival to preserve our culture. It's a very well known event in Colorado. Over 10,000 people attend it every year.
What is it called?
Um, Taste of Ethiopia Festival. The
Nice.
Taste of Ethiopia Festival, yeah. And even the Taste of Ethiopia Festival is Pan African. It's we always host at least one other African country's culture there. Some years we've brought uh, a drum uh, band from Kenya. We've had dancers from Zimbabwe. We always feature another African group just to show solidarity. So that's always been the theme. But I've also worked, active in the African American community. um, I'm part of the 100 Black Men Who Cook in Denver, promoting healthy eating in the African American community. I share a lot of Ethiopian recipes there. But in 2019, I was awarded the African American Who Make a Difference Award by the Denver Urban Spectrum. So that was a big honor to get recognition from the greater African American community. But I just really believe that as Black people, as people of Africa, I mean, let alone Ethiopia and Eritrea, where we have so much in common, all of Africa and the people of Africa, I think that our struggles are one and the same, and we've been led to believe that we're enemies or we should be fighting. But I never believed in that. I always believed we're one people, and that we have a better chance of making it by working together. And everything that I've done throughout my life and advocacy work has been pro unity. I mean, like with respect and working together for our collective future, and that's kind of what carried us into the No More movement, which is also Pan African. So I really still strongly believe that Pan Africanism, working together, connecting our struggles, is our way out. As Africans, really, Ethiopia, Eritrea, we have a rich country. We have resources, but we've been led to believe that we're helpless. We've been led to believe that we need saviors from the West. But really, we have the resources. Over 50% of the world's resource come from Africa. But if we stop the exploitation, if we stop the tribalism, and we work together, the future really will belong to us. And one of the reasons I respect Eritrea so much is just its resilience to our sovereignty and not bowing down, to foreign influence and subjugation. And I know Eritrea has paid dearly for that, but true independence and liberty means being sovereign and being standing on your own and using your own resources, and letting your people really own the country versus foreign governments and corporations. And that's what Pan Africanism is to me, is security and sovereignty in every sense.
A lot of people have a different understanding of what Pan Africanism is, and you have touched a little bit on it. Can you say how that's being manifested now? How people understand Pan Africanism and how we should sell it
Yeah,
at all?
Pan Africanism is really something that affirms the worth of Black people and rejects the inferiority ascribed by by the racist throughout the past century and a half, right? Africa, by any standard, I would argue, is the richest continent and the most exploited place. You know, for 400 years, we've been subjugated to colonialism, slavery, and so much more. And we've been divided with this artificial borders throughout Africa that were designed to create conflict and war, you know, that were designed to put us in competition against each other. So Pan Africanism really helped launch the struggle to overcome that, and to the struggle initially to overcome colonialism. But at this point, obviously, um, there's no colonialism, but there's neocolonialism, and the struggle is to overcome the neocolonialism for rights and equity for all Africans, not just in Africa, but the diaspora, including Americans of African descent, Caribbeans, all of Africa diaspora throughout the world. Um, Pan Africanism is our answer for true liberty, because Black people, we're not treated fairly anywhere. I mean, we've seen it everywhere. We've seen it in Ukraine when the war broke down, the way Africans, immigrants, and students were being treated versus others. We've seen how refugees from Africa get treated in Europe versus Ukrainian refugees that were welcomed with red carpet, right? Where Africans were being beaten and being let drown in the ocean. So that has to change. We can no longer be okay with being seen as beggars. We can no longer be seen as corrupt and all these names and stereotypical things that have been labeled on Africa. It's not true. It is not true. We have one of the most educated population. We have resources. We have natural resources, human resources. 1.3 billion people in the continent. There's no reason why we have to live with these current conditions. And the average age in Africa, by the way, including Ethiopia and Eritrea, is 19. I think in Eritrea it's 20. So the average person is only 20 years old. This is telling you that there is a shift, a change of generation coming. And what are we going to pass on to this next generation that's growing in Eritrea, that's growing in Ethiopia, throughout Africa? Are we going to give them the inheritance of pain and suffering and subjugation, or are we going to give them a new legacy that really shows them that they're worthy and that they don't no longer need to be subjugated or treated unfairly like we've been and our parents and generations have been? So I think this is the right time to do that, to break that chain of problems that our people have experienced and start a new chapter.
I, I kind of agree. I actually full-heartedly agree with everything that you just said. And I would like to add and just use that as a question for the next question that I would like to ask you, which is the Eritrean and Ethiopian communities, especially for this Africa People's Forum, have been working together in a short period of time in ways that I have not seen or experienced it before. First of all, the number of people that were engaged. First, I feel very privileged to play a part in it. I feel very honored to play a part in it. And I also have been on it for a long time, for about 15 years, working with people like Naaman Zaleke and all that. And to be able to see it being manifested in this way is incredible to me. So the way we kind of, put it together, the Africa People's Forum, especially opposite the U.S. Africa People's Summit. Can you talk about the relationship, how you see it today, the Eritrean and Ethiopian communities working together? Now that you've been saying that, we have to work to break the barriers to make sure that we, all Africans and blacks, have to work together to make sure that we don't go back to what we used to be, which is to wars and things like that. So, can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, the collaboration and the work that we've witnessed between Ethiopians and Eritreans is a good example of how Africans should work together. You know, obviously, in the Horn of Africa, we recognize a common threat, the TPLF, that has been, a threat to Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, that has helped us unite our struggle together. But the TPLF is really symbolic of the Western dominance that has plagued Africa in a way where they pick the winners and arm them and enable them as proxy to do the bidding, and that's what TPLF did. And Ethiopians, Eritreans came together to resist that, and I think we won, and we overcame that. Um, and you know, that's what needs to happen throughout Africa. There's a lot of things going on in West Africa and Burkina, Mali, Niger. There's so much going on, and everything that's happening in Africa that has to do with war, conflict, is there's always some European power behind it, that is picking winners, that is tipping the scale. All right, and a lot of it is done by enabling proxies within Africa, proxies like the TPLF. So that's why the conscious people of Africa need to be aware that you don't have a colonial power coming in to invade you, but what they're using is people that look like you and me, that speak our language, to come and do the bidding for them, which is a lot more dangerous than what we've witnessed before in the last century. This is more dangerous because it's more subtle. It's not out in the front, and it's really hard for people to see. And there's a lot of development and foreign aid that is being used as being weaponized, I should say, to push agendas that really have nothing to do with human rights. And on top of that, the level and the speed of sanctions that is being applied on Africa, including Eritrea, and to some extent Ethiopia, is very alarming. If you really look at the sanctions on Africa, 1/3 of the continent has some kind of a sanction against it, and sanction is a form of warfare. It's economic warfare, and there's entities that say they care and they want to help Africans because we're poor, but then again they turn around and sanction you, and put you on an economic chokehold until you submit, right? Until you kneel down. And to me, that's counterproductive, and that's the subjugation of the African people. And I think it's about time Africans say enough and say that no, no thanks, we got this. And that's why it's important the work that you and Naaman and other leaders have been doing together for years, and that's what we're trying to do. And that was the message of the Africa People Forum that we hosted at the Eritrean Center, is you know expanding this unity and solidarity beyond the Horn of Africa. Because I mean, to be honest with you, we can't do it alone. Ethiopia and Eritrea cannot do it alone. This has to be an Africa thing. When I say Africa, this has to be a global movement, a global solidarity and collaboration of all people that are descendants of Africa, whether um, they're Americans, whether they're Haitians, Jamaicans, Ethiopians, Eritreans, Nigerians. We're all on the same boat, and our destiny is intertwined. And that's the message: is that we need to create the platforms that will enable us to come together. We need to create the opportunities, and we need to develop the tools and the methods and the ways to connect and take action. Not just talk, not just debate, not just make appearances, but real tangible change by real actions that we could do in so many different ways. And that was really what the message of the forum was. There's people are excited about it. People are taking actions to go back, take it back to their home states and do it. We're gonna do this again, maybe in different cities, probably multiple times a year, at least once a year. So that's the plan.
I'm as an Eritrean, I'm extremely proud, for the resilience of the Eritrean people, for the resilience of uh, the struggle what we went through, and because of our struggle, now countries like Ethiopia are beginning to be anchored into the struggle or on the struggle with Eritrea, and we are having a set-up effect in the region, and I think that is the one of the most significant aspects of the uh, Africa People's Forum. Eritrea is anchor for the region at a critical moment. This is not to brag about it, but it's a matter of fact. We paid the price at a moment when the people of Ethiopia were not able to challenge the TPLF. We were there because our interests are shared, and our future is shared. Had the TPLF succeeded, the Ethiopia that you see today would not be the same. I think would be very bloody, would be extremely ugly situation, worse than what we've seen in Afghanistan, Libya, and every place else because of the diversity of Ethiopia, because of the vastness of it, and the geographic makeup of country and all, the interest that's in Ethiopia would have really engulfed the region in a very, very chaotic situation. And I'm so glad that we are at the point that we are, and we are addressing issues not only for our region, but globally. And the Africa People's Forum was an incredible manifestation of it. There were three issues that were addressed at the forum. One of them was economic development as a human rights issue. Uh, there were recommendations for the U.S. Policy, U.S. Africa policy reforms, and also there's U.S. Africa, how the people's struggles connect, exactly what you were talking about now. Yeah, and the third portion of it, which was very interesting to me, the power of story, changing narratives to push for policy change. In other words, how the narratives are being sold to Africans and to the world, to the Americans, and how we were able to talk about it, challenge it, address it. Can you give people a sense of what the Africa People's Forum was, especially vis-a-vis opposite the U.S. Africa Summit that's going on, and that's kind of the reason why we are here.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to agree with you about the resilience of the Eritrean people. I definitely admire that. Now, people say Eritrea is a small country. Eritrea is 5 times the size of Israel. Eritrea is a big country, in my opinion, and it's big people, and most of all, it's people with big hearts. And I really have a great deal of admiration. Eritreans, by large, I see are principled, and have been a great stabilizer, really, in the Horn of Africa, especially the last 2 years when Ethiopia was attacked by the TPLF, and working with Eritreans brothers the last um, you know people like Dr. Simon Tesfa Mariam. I've just been so impressed and really amazed by the strength of the community and its people. So I just wanted to echo that. Now at this forum, yeah, on the forum, we like you said, we had 3 different panels. Economic development was the first one, and then we had a second panel. The one I spoke at was connecting our struggles, and the third one was about the power of story. Now, on the economic development, we had Elias Amare, Dr. Simon Tesfamariam. We had uh, um, Elias Hirui on it, and it was really about Africa's economic development as a human rights issue. What role the U.S. should play in the development, and do U.S. dominated financial institution hinder development? See, what happens a lot of time when we hear about development, development should be about building capacity. It should be about enabling people to use their resources to overcome poverty. But what we've seen in the past is development has been used as a Trojan horse, or it's been used as an excuse for exploitation, and that development has not helped but hindered. Some of the things that was discussed on this panel was how there's not a single success story of a country in Africa that's making it that made it, or that got out of the mess because of the Western development in there. So we talked about the counter effects of the development, and really true development comes through sovereignty, through self sufficiency. You know what I mean? Not by aid. And how has human rights and human assistance, humanitarian assistance, how has it been used in Africa? It's really been used to push a certain type of foreign policy agenda, right? Hey, we're gonna give you this much, blah blah blah. We're gonna give you this much dollar. We're gonna give you this much food, but you got to do X, Y, Z. All right. So while you're getting that donation, that food, your diamond, your gold, your oil is being exploited. So that's what needs to stop. And true development, and on the connecting the struggle part on the second panel, which I was on, as well as Erica Keynes from the Black Alliance for Peace, uh, and Eugene Purier from the Answer Coalition, and Paul Sankara, the brother of the late President Sankara, which was such a great honor to have him. We talked about connecting our struggle, and I kind of talked a little bit about this before earlier today, but our struggles are the same. You know, the struggle, the issue of Ethiopia is not only the issue of Eritrea, but it's also the issue of Haiti. The issue of Haiti is the issue of Nigeria. The issue of Nigeria is the issue of Harlem. That's how we have to think, is that our issues are the same. And literally, when you really look behind the curtain, it's the same thing that's happening in different formats everywhere. So it's about how do we struggle our movements? How do we connect our movement? How do we connect our struggles and work together to change our destiny, to change our future? And that's what that panel was about. And finally, the third one was storytelling. Emmanuel, you mentioned it earlier. What is the perception of Africa? What is the media in the U.S. Saying about Africa? We're savages, we're poor, we're violent. And it's not just about Africa. The stereotypes here about African Americans. There's a great deal of dehumanization of Black people. And there's a certain sense of disrespect that, by all account, we're not being seen or treated as equals, right? And that is fueled by this perception, by this media coverage. When was the last time you turned the news and saw something positive about Africa or about African Americans? Yeah, it's always negative, right? So that's what we talked about, how we can change that, how we can tell our own stories.
Can you talk about the strategies of what we can do in order to be able to tell our stories?
Yeah, what exactly what we're doing here, Emmanuel. I mean, one of the things is that the mainstream media, the mass media, is really a dying entity. Its best days are behind it. We have technology that's enabling us to start our own independent medias, like you have here, and we have social media. We have different ways of connecting. So it's time that we continue to push that, to support independent media, to support, um, uh, to tell our stories through that, to write, to blog, and most of all, to do events and actions like we did over this weekend, where we come together and we unequivocally tell our stories loud and clear. and show up everywhere, be everywhere, right? So when you hear something being said about, uh, uh, let's say, um, you know, Nigeria, you shouldn't be quiet. You should say, "This affects me. This is about me," and speak up. When they do something to Ethiopia, when they do something to Eritrea or Kenya or Uganda, everyone, 1.3 billion Africans should speak up, and say, "No, that's not true. This is not how it goes." That's how we're going to overcome this, is by exercising our voices. And we got the numbers. It's a large community. Africans are 1.3 billion, is a lot. So I think that's how we tell our own stories, is by challenging the norm, by countering the norm, in every way, in academics, the curriculum that are being taught in school, the history that is being taught about Africa, if there's any, it's always, it needs to be challenged. The stories that are being told about Africa and Africans needs to change. So that's what I would say. We're empowered. We cannot sit around and wait for a savior to come. There's no savior coming, and those who come as saviors are there to exploit us. So we are who we got. We are who we've been waiting for. So it's really a call to action for every single one, every single African everywhere, to buckle up your belt, roll up your sleeve, and get to work.
I was really impressed by the level of expertise, understanding, knowledge of the people of the panel that we had. And for me, it's just a show of where we are. First of all, not only do we know what the problem is, we know in depth exactly what the problem is and how we can deal with it moving forward. Um, the other aspect of the meeting that I found very impressive is that we have to find a way to express that to our communities. The interest of the young people that were there, and the way, these are educated people, and we need to be able to reach out to African communities, Black communities everywhere, to express our understanding, because that's the only way we are going to be able to move the needle just a little bit towards development, towards growth. And I think the world is fundamentally changing, and the changes that we are seeing in the multipolarity of the world order that is taking place right now, which brings me back to the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit. Can you explain how you understand the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit?
This is the second time the United States is doing an African summit. The first one was under President Barack Obama, and and you know, anytime that people sit down and talk, it's a good thing, right? So I'm glad to see this gesture, but I think it's a recognition. The way I see it is, this is a recognition by Washington that Africa can no longer be ignored or exploited. That it is important. It's an important enough that they're basically doing this. But also, there's an aspect of it that kind of gives you the feeling that this kind of comes across as a Cold War type of maneuvering. There was an African summit in China, for example. There was an summit in Japan. There was an African summit in Turkey, and Russia has done an African summit. And now there's an African summit in the US. So why are all these world powers and, strong countries hosting African summit? I think a real African summit should be in Africa, not in Europe or Asia, right? It should be in Africa. But nevertheless, we'll have to wait and see what's going to come out of this. But if it is the typical, same old thing that we've seen in the past, where the relationship with Africa comes from a place of disrespect, in a way where we're seen as some kind of an incompetent people that need to be guided, then it's wrong. Then it's not going to accomplish what it does. And I think that time has passed for something like that. But anytime you have world powers competing in Africa, we end up losing because the intention is not to help us. The intention is because they're competing for resources. Because we got it. Africa got it. Got the oil, got the diamond, got the gold. So what we don't want to see is a round two colonialism of Africa, like in the 1800s and before. So, my hope is that we'll see what comes out of the summit. Um, but and the reason why we did the People's Summit is to exactly express that thought that it doesn't have to be this way. There's a way we can have a mutually beneficial relationship between the U.S. and Africa. The American people are great people, and the people of Africa are great people, and at the end of the day, our interests are common and intertwined because we live in a global village, right? So as soon as we can get this message across to the leaders, and say that, hey, the old way is not working anymore, and we stand in solidarity, united, to say no more to this, the better things will be for all of humanity. And that's how we're gonna help each other out, and that's how we're gonna make a better world for the next generation, whether you're in Africa or America or Europe.
I think, just I don't have a differing opinion when foreign powers compete, Africa loses. But I think this time, uh, the way China did it with the FOCAC, going back to 2000, they've done it in African countries. Last year they did it in Senegal. And the reason why the competition for Africa is stiff is because China really got into Africa and start doing developmental work instead of the what the U.S. did for decades. Using USAID, the military, uh, and also anchor states like Nigeria, doing the bidding, and also the RECs, regional economic communities, being the connectors to the EGATs and the ECOWAS, the for the AGOA and all those kind of trade relations. They never had any kind of bilateral trade relations with African countries, and I think the China was the reason why they were changing it, and also to expand the understanding. If you look at what Russia and China are doing with India, how they're transforming the Indian economy, helping transform the Indian economy. Of course, India is doing it on its own, but they are big players. They are big trading partners, and because of that, there's a role there, and that is seeping through into the Middle East. So the Saudis are now the benefactors of having an outlet to work with in a different way. Instead of working with the United States and with Western countries, they have trading partners in Asia now. That's going to be able to, in some ways, benefit Africa long term, because especially our region. And so I think the competition for me is probably a good thing, provided that African nations know how to deal with it. And I think especially Eritrea and Ethiopia right now, if you look at it, are poised to take advantage of it, because now Ethiopia is coming militarily strong, hopefully, especially after the defeat of the TPLF, and especially if the TPLF gets disarmed completely. Think about Eritrea and Ethiopia coming together, just economically, strategically, and they are a much bigger power than any of the European vassal states that we just see today. So, how do you expand upon the statements that I just made?
No, yeah, great points. Great point. I mean, there's definitely, you're right, a benefit out of competition. And what China has done in Africa has been beneficial in a way where a great deal of infrastructure has been built, and a great deal of investment has come in that has created and helped fuel economies locally, that's helping uplift people out of poverty in a real sense. And to a great extent, the Chinese have really been um, very careful as not to interfere in internal politics, and and they stay away from using the investments and the activities, um, to I guess affect the politics. I think that's a good thing. And by the way, that the United States' biggest partner, trade partner, I believe, is China. America does most of its trade, and its American industries are in China. Most of them, the outsourcing, the manufacturing center is all in China. Whether it's your phone, your iPhone, or whatnot, it's made in China by Chinese companies. So the U.S. economy and the Chinese economy is intertwined. You know, but when people say that, you know Africa shouldn't deal with China, it should deal with America. Well, America is dealing with China, like
That
in a
does make sense.
massive scale. Yeah, and how much money does America owes in debt to China, right? So I think at the end of the day, I think what is good for Africa is that we have partners, trade partners that treat us as equal, and that the relationship is based on mutually beneficial, instead of exploitative, instead of coming in and throwing money around, aid around, and threatening you. You got to do this and do that. You have to vote this way in the UN. You got to do this. You got to do that. If not, you're not going to get invited to the summit, or we're going to sanction you. That's very disrespectful. And this are dignified countries. This are dignified people, Africa, and you shouldn't be going around threatening us, and you shouldn't be going around and bullying Africans. And that's what I would say about that. But again, we live in a global world that's increasingly, the world is becoming smaller. Even Africans, we can't make it alone. No one can make it alone. But we have to have a fair share, an equitable share of this global growth and this global prosperity that's happening. Africa's got to be in, whether it's energy. Why Africa is one of the biggest producers of oil. Why do we have energy shortage in Africa, but no energy shortage elsewhere in Europe? Or, there's so much that can be done, and partners who enable us, and partners who come in and work with us in a mutually beneficial way should always be welcomed.
I was really surprised, the fact that they kept it kind of secret, and at the end, they said that Eritrea is not invited. But just like you said, it's very disrespectful. And the South African president didn't show up, or he just rejected to not participate, and so that is another big blow. And a lot of people may not know this is the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit. It's not U.S. African Leaders Summit, as opposed to the FOCAC, the China events that goes through the African Union to invite everybody. Everybody is invited except for one country. I think I'm trying to think of what that country is, because it has relations with Taiwan, and I think that's a no-no for China. But everybody else is invited. U.S. has all kinds of conditions, and so the Eritrea situation was very surprising. How did you see that? What was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, to be honest with you, because Eritrea has been, first of all, um, the whole Horn of Africa region, which mainly is made up of Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Somalia, is a very, very important strategic area, with the Red Sea. the major global trade line, the Gulf of Aden, and it's also a region that's the source of the Nile, right? So it's a very important area, and for decades now, Eritrea has resisted really to bow down to foreign influence, and has really refused to play. Even aid that comes with all kinds of strings attached to it, Eritrea has said no. And because of that, there's attempts to marginalize Eritrea. That's why Eritrea has been sanctioned for over 20 years. That is why Eritrea was invaded by the TPLF, in the 90s, late 90s, with the help of the West. And that's why they were put on sanction. And that's why they're just really, what they're trying to do is isolate Eritrea. And I don't believe in sanctions. And even if their problem was with the Eritrean government, sanctioning the people of Eritrea is just cruel. you know we should let people be. But the intentional uh, lack of invitation to Eritrea is just really um, another form of the bullying that we've seen, is that if you don't do what we say, if you don't jump when we say jump, then you're not invited to the party. So I just think that's childish. And as a sovereign African country, as an important country, Eritrea should be the first country to be invited if we're trying to improve our relationship with Africa. I'm an American citizen. As an American citizen, I want the United States to have good relationships with all African countries. I don't want to see African countries being sanctioned. I don't want to see Eritrea being sanctioned. I don't want to see um, Eritrea being isolated. And just um, you can hear the rhetoric that comes out of the State Department about Eritrea from the Biden administration. It's very hostile. It's very, very hostile. And it just kind of sad. It's sad when I see it, and it's really unfortunate that it has to be that way. But again, the Eritrean people are resilient, and that I think that uh, um, in the end, the people will always win.
I think things have changed drastically in our region, and our region, the Horn of Africa, including East Africa, now that Kenya is a part of it, is kind of like the hotbed and of the world. And everybody's attention is right there because of the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. And you have Kenya that connects seven African landlocked countries. Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Central Africa, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and then that really connects them to the Indian Ocean and to Asia. And then you have the Red Sea, which is extremely important waterways, and so that's the reason why it is the hotbed. And I think that's why the Eritrea-Ethiopia relation is significant. I would like to ask you two questions in regards to that. A, how do you see the current state of relations between Eritrea and Ethiopia? B, how do you think the current administration in Ethiopia is handling that relationship, and how do you think that's going to manifest moving forward vis-a-vis the West and all the international actors that are trying to buy in for influence?
Yeah, Eritrea and Ethiopia, had been you know, at for 20 years, right after the war. For 20 years, it's been borders closed and basically in a state of war for all these years, and finally that has been broken, and not only we have peace, but we're collaborating. So I think the relationship between the two countries is great. The people of Eritrea and the people of Ethiopia um, have a common interest, and that common interest has so much potential for the whole Horn of Africa, right? And I would hope and I would like to see more and more of that. As peace comes to the region, I would hope to see more economic activities. I mentioned trading earlier. Why do we trade more with? Why does Africa trade more with Europe? Why is Ethiopia trading more with Europe than Eritrea next door or Somalia next door? Can we do more? Can we build the rail lines? Can we open up this trade that would enable both of us to use our resources to enable our people? And I'm seeing signs of more and more of that collaboration between the two countries, and I just really hope that will continue, and something special is really happening in the Horn of Africa, especially with Ethiopia and Eritrea. Now, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges, especially in Ethiopia. We're still dealing with an ethnic federal system that the TPLF imposed on us. That's really causing the death and suffering of millions of people. We're gonna uh, have a lot bigger internal struggles to come through in Ethiopia, but Eritrea has been a great partner to the people of Ethiopia. You know, whether it is in North, whether it's in like Walqait or whether it's anywhere else, Eritreans have been very helpful to help bring stability and peace and really help save our people. But my hope is that this wars and killings um, will stop and will overcome, and we can shift our focus into development and helping each other out. I mean, how great it would be to see that, right? To see the trade. We got the Nile Gerd that's about to be completed. There's a lot of power in Ethiopia that could go to Eritrea. Eritrea have so much to offer. Why is Ethiopia paying billions of dollars to Djibouti and not to Eritrea, right? I mean, that's just my personal question. There's so much that we could do with each other that could help both of us, and I think that's where we're heading. But the immediate problems that we have right now by proxies like the TPLF and the OLF and things like that really need to be overcome because peace is very essential for development.
As we come to the end of this conversation, which is really incredibly enlightening to me, is there a way, a path forward for the Eritrean and Ethiopian communities to be effective? I guess my take is we're not going to be able to be farmers in the country. We're not going to be able to to fight for the countries. We are outside. We are abroad. The only way that we can participate and making a difference is where we are, changing perceptions and doing all kinds of things to help our community. And I think collectively, whether it's doing the political campaigns and what have you, we are going to be able to do a lot. So we are doing it, but to be able to do it in a much effective manner, uh, how do you see that playing out moving forward? What should we do as communities, to encourage what we have been doing?
I mean, there's so much we could do. Both Ethiopia and Eritrea have a very large diaspora um, and relatively successful diaspora in so many ways. And we're capable of bringing about change, right? And the first thing is to do what we're doing now, more of what we're doing now, the collaboration, really, um, um, to the working together, the showing up together, right? Um, no one can stop us. We've seen it throughout the No More movement on how we showed up together on the streets. We've seen it on advocacy where we showed up together in Congress and with lawmakers, how much change we were able to get by working together. And how I think that should be as a template for all Africans. But listen, it's very easy for Ethiopians and Eritreans to work together. It's very easy. You know what I mean?
I
Uh,
was really surprised. When they were in our community center. By the way, that was the first time that they have been I mean, we have invited them. We have had a lot of Ethiopians come, but these are individuals voluntarily coming, not as groups or just a part of an organization. Invited that they came voluntarily, they registered, and when they came, they were really impressed. This is the first time they've seen how the Eritrean community, the people, how organized we are, and everybody was talking about it. And so, to me, that was one of the most amazing things, and it's an example that a lot of them could take. And a lot of the participants, even the panelists, were surprised how organized everything was. But for us, it's a second nature. So yeah, it is easy for me to work with Ethiopians. It's a very easy, and the more we do this, the easier it's going to get. And I think it's going to be able to facilitate a lot more action that's going to be meaningful for our future. I kind of covered your story, but you can go ahead. You
Yeah.
can add to it.
No, it's right. It was great. When I walked into the center, the first person that greeted me said, "Hello, Nebiyu, welcome to your second home." That's what they said to me. So I thought that was beautiful. So
Nice.
that's what we should be saying each other. Let's show up for each other. Eritreans show up to the Ethiopian events. Ethiopians show up to the Eritrean events. It's your second home. It's our second home, and vice versa, right? That's how we should look at it, right? And it's easy to do that, like you said, and we saw that this weekend. So let's do more of that everywhere, globally, and there's gonna be nothing that could stop us. Nothing.
Things that you would like to say to end the conversation. First of all, I am truly humble the fact that you have made a personal initiative to come all the way down from Denver to attend the Africa People's Forum. I am really proud that you are diligent in the way that you approach things. You're always consistent. Your message is being on point, and about Eritrea, about all our campaigns, and and all the rallies and everything else with the No More movement. And so I feel honored that you are here today. You probably did not expect this conversation to be in this manner, but I'm so glad that we are able to do it. And I hope that I'll be able to do it with more Ethiopians like this to talk about a lot of different issues. So
Thanks so much.